So good morning, everybody, and welcome to a beautiful Thursday morning. Thanks for joining me today. And actually, if you joined last time as well, thanks for coming back. So my name is Laurent Bouvier, and I'm going to be your host today on the second Zone webinar. So a few of you might be new to Zoom. I think we're actually working out a few teething problems ourselves. So the majority of you will be on mute, so don't worry about that. What you will have on the bottom of your screen is a question and answer button. So if you've got any questions for myself or my co-host today, then do click on that, put your question in, and then we'll do our best to answer those questions as we go through. So before I introduce today's speaker, so I wanted just to acknowledge the obvious. You know, we're in a sort of uncharted territories as a world of work, as a planet as a whole, and everybody's been impacted. So firstly, I want to make sure and say, I hope everybody's safe out there, doing well, adapting, looking after themselves and looking after their families. The purpose of these webinars is really simple, really. It's about trying to contribute positively to change, to the change that we're all going through. Because I genuinely believe that in these testing moments, if we all do what we can, if we all try and focus on our best self and contribute positively to the world around us, then we'll be able to look back at this moment in time and think, hey, you know what? We did the best we could, and we were really positive in our contribution as being good humans. So let me introduce you to my co-host today, Andrew MacAskill. So Andrew, are you on the line?
I am. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, Andrew. So Andrew is the founder of Executive Career Jump. Andrew is a LinkedIn authority on career coaching. He's partnered with lots of individuals, senior leaders, in helping them think about their search for their next new role. But also, Andrew also works with businesses thinking about outplacement and how they support employees when they're having to make those tough decisions about letting them go and thinking about how they can support them through that often challenging process. So Andrew's here to talk about the dreaded R word, redundancy. So Andrew, do you just want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks for that introduction. I think you summed it up very well. But yeah, I'm Andrew MacAskill. As you say, I work on both sides of the outplacement equation, really. So helping leaders understand what they want and how to get it, and helping businesses go through a right sizing or career transitioning type process without causing huge damage to their brand, their reputation, and their culture.
Brilliant. So what were you doing before, Andrew? What makes you feel you're really qualified to sit in this space?
Yeah, so I started off as an accountant because it's what my mum wanted me to do, and because at 17 I asked my uncle how he got his Audi and what he did for a job, and he said he was an FD, and I said, what's that? He said it's an accountant. So we went into accountancy first, did my exams and auditing experience and all that sort of thing, but then got into recruitment about 15 or 16 years ago, which I'm really grateful for, because it took me all over the world and got me looking. And it's like a real-time MBA recruitment. If you attack the industry properly, you learn leadership, you learn commercial, marketing, all sorts of stuff. And in my final role, I was running an exec search business. As you know, we collaborated on various projects. And in that exec search business, I started to notice that a lot of leaders were really, really struggling during transition. That traditional outplacement was a little bit outdated and wasn't social media or personal branding focused enough, and that people needed help. So in my spare time, I set up Career Jump initially as kind of a side project and a passion project. And just through momentum and some good luck and finding something that felt really purposeful, it's kicked on really, really nicely for there. So I'm using my insights from the executive search world and knowing what clients are looking for and knowing the type of candidates that get fixed up and those that don't, and seeing businesses that deal with restructures well and those that don't, and have pulled together a number of programs to help people and organizations through that. So yeah, I'm not sure I'm fully qualified for it, but it's going all right so far.
Sounds good. Sounds like you got some really good experience in terms of what you're providing with your clients. So I saw you're pretty active on LinkedIn. I saw you put up a really good post yesterday, and probably eases us nicely into the two worlds of both how companies should get it right or try to get it right in terms of making redundancies and the individuals. Did I see something about Bike?
Yeah, yeah. Bird was the business that was the link that I shared. So for anyone that hasn't seen this, it's terrible. So it's over 400 people being made redundant by an organisation called Bird, which is a $1 billion valuation company that delivers on-demand scooters and has a tech platform basically. And they made over 400 people redundant on a call like this in less than 90 seconds in a very formulaic way. I mean, what was, you're obviously heavily involved in the leadership world, Lauren. What was your feeling when you heard the clip and you saw the example?
I felt there was just a massive gap between, what they were saying and what they were doing. I often talk to people about the shadow of a leader. It's about what they're projecting. So they were saying all the right things, but actually how they were doing it were just completely alien to that. I felt there was a number of different ways that they could have done that better in challenging times. And, they just went for what I felt was just the most expedient route to get rid of as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So it just didn't marry up at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the ripple effect of these things is massive. So I do a lot of work with an organisation called Collabs, who have outplacement as part of one of their recovery programs for businesses. And in that business, we talk about the 3 circles that are affected by that kind of restructure. So first and foremost, I know you're a very human-centric coach and leader and advisor, and at a human level, zooming in via this kind of call to people en masse to cut them from your organisation when a lot of them are actually isolated and in on their own is, really regrettable. Reading it and not doing it in the right way is also really regrettable. But also from a business impact point of view, there's 3 levels to the ripple. There's the impact on your own business. So the people that are left is significant when you kind of break your values and your cultural trust by dealing with things in that kind of callous way. The impact on the second ripple, which is the people who are leaving, is big. So a lot of them might be customers and might never be customers again in the future, or might move laterally in your industry and not advocate you anymore. And also just the overall reputation and brand. I mean, I've seen a number of people on some of the streams on that particular example. And let's, in fairness to Bird, they're not the only ones that have done this, but that particular example has gone viral. But a lot of people saying that they'll now opt out of using their services.
Yeah.
So it's such, rippling, wide-reaching stuff, this. And if we're going to get through the difficult times that we're getting through at the moment with, understanding the human and the business impact, people have got to do a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, when you were saying that, Andrew, the thing that popped up for me was, companies invest a huge amount of money in customer advocacy, and thinking about the customer experience. But who do those customers touch? They touch the employees of the organization. And I think whether it's the extremity of what you just talked about with Bird, but, on an ongoing basis, thinking about the employee experience, how are they feeling? Are they feeling respected, engaged, seen at some level? And if you can get that right, I believe you can genuinely go through probably some of the toughest challenges. And there was a really good example of, I don't know if you saw it, about Gravity Payments, another US-based company. And their CEO, Dan Price, he hit the headlines a while ago where he wanted to increase the salary of all of his employees. And the only way he could do that is reduce his salary quite considerably. And that was the route he went down. So he faced a very similar challenge to probably a lot of businesses at this moment in time, which is, we've got revenues dropping. I think his was something like a 50% revenue drop. If we carry on, we'll go into administration. And he was presented by his FD with 2 options, which is lay off 20% or go into administration. And he chose the third option, which wasn't on the list that he'd been provided. So he got his people together. He was really open and really transparent and just said, look, this is the situation we're in. We're all in this together. So let's solve this together. How can we do this? Here's some ideas, but how can we do this? At the end of that process, everybody had elected, and that's massively different when you elect to do something to yourself rather than being told you've got to do it, to take varying degrees of pay cut. So those who could afford it took a bigger cut, and those who were a little bit more tight on their money took a slightly lower trimming of their pay cut. He reduced his pay to 0. So he led from the front, which again, going back to the shadow of the leader, is like, what a great role model of that. They were able to save so much money that the currently, who knows what the future will hold, but currently they've got no need to lay anybody off, and they're not facing administration. But whatever they do, they faced it together. And that for me is the great power of bringing people together rather than pushing people apart at times of crisis.
Now, I love the psychological effect of electing in as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think if things are done to you, you know, there's a level of resistance that you'll start to put on it. If you're doing it because you believe in it, you'll go the extra mile. We see that in so many different ways. So I think companies can get this really right or really wrong. You can let go of people and nobody ever wants to do that, but they can say, hey, you know what? They treated me as a person. They treated me with respect rather than a commodity that just wasn't needed anymore.
It's very interesting. So what are you helping people with at the moment in terms of all the changes that are going on?
So, I mean, it breaks into two camps. For me, it's all about leaders struggling with what they're faced with, as in terms of revenue and the costs. Actually, costs are sometimes going up at this moment in time. And they're just helping them work through their options and then how they communicate. If there's one thing I'm reinforcing time and time again from a leadership point of view, is be clear, be consistent, be supportive, care for your people, communicate, and let people find their new norms. You know, home working, for some people, you know, what IT equipment, you know, I'll offer somewhere. I've got kids at home. So, you know, lots of that they're getting through. But you know, I think the other thing is preparing people for if they're going to have to be made redundant in the future, and also working with organizations about, you know, if they've got to let off people, how's that going to work? And I know that's where you've got lots of experience with supporting businesses in terms of, right, what's the process that it should go through and how can they support groups of people if they're having to let them go?
Yeah, and I think as with any leadership challenge, communication, you won't be surprised to hear, is the key to all of that. I've simply never worked with somebody in an outplacement scenario who complained that the business over communicated during that process. That doesn't exist. You literally can't over communicate. So yeah, I think it's, you know, authenticity, transparency, as per your previous case study, you know, people actually offering the opportunity to elect into these things. I think that's absolutely the right way to go about it, and communicate.
Okay, and then thinking that for you know, people who were already looking for their next new role, and you know, what sort of advice, what sort of guidance have you been giving your clients in that area?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, don't hide is the biggest thing right now. So from a psychological point of view, there's a temptation to wallow in the darkness of it all at the moment, in the struggle of it all at the moment. And, you know, I don't blame people for feeling anxious or difficult. It's really strange and challenging times. But what do we know for sure? Well, what we know for sure is that a large percentage of the work population are on furlough at the moment. And when they come back off a furlough, there aren't going to be jobs for all of them. Mm-hmm. And so what we know is there's a flood of candidates coming in 2 to 3, 4 months' time, at which point the supply and demand dynamics in the candidate market are going to completely change. So my number one bit of advice to everybody right now is to stay really, really proactive, to not give up. Yes, there's less opportunities, but I've got clients, friends, contacts, interviewing, accepting offers every single week during this lockdown period so far. And so you've got to keep at it, because it's going to get tougher in a few months' time. And so you've got to make use of the fact that you can be agile and building connections and taking yourself to market right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you know, how do you get people to stay positive? You talked about it's a tough market. How do you get them to stay positive and not let that, you know, the pressure of what's happening to them really get into their psyche?
I think first of all, it's about anchoring back to a process. Mm-hmm. So using your business skills actually on your own job search.
Okay.
I think it's easy to surf LinkedIn all day, get lost, disappear down rabbit holes, not be very productive, spend ages applying for roles and never hearing back, getting demoralized, all that sort of stuff. Whereas I think if you're anchored to a plan and a process and you feel like you're using your business skills and you're taking ownership of the challenge, psychologically, that's the right place to be in.
Right. Okay. And I've seen some of your posts in terms of, really thinking about your LinkedIn profile, really thinking about customizing your applications and bringing out your skills. Any sort of tips and knowledge there that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, I think the big, if you think of the whole thing as a funnel process, which most of the people listening to this call would have experienced a sales and marketing funnel in the past. If you think of it as a funnel process, LinkedIn for me is very much the top of the funnel. So it's where you apply for jobs, but it's also where you need to attract in jobs. So you need to make sure your profile is buzzword optimized for the things that you want to be found for. So a lot of people, when I start working them, have some really compelling, fantastic paragraphs written in their LinkedIn profile that no one's ever going to see, because there's not a buzzword in there that would allow them to show up in searches for the stuff that they want. Some even hide their availability. They've been advised to hide their availability, which I think is an error, and maybe don't want people to feel like they're on the market when they are. Whilst I understand some of the reasoning behind that, I don't think now is the time for that, because I think people are actually going to want to lean on people who can move quickly and are available.
Just jumping in on that, Andrew, but do you think that's linked to pride? I think sometimes, senior execs who've been made redundant, there's a pride thing that they don't want people to know that they've been let go of.
Yeah, I think pride's a big problem. Ego's a problem. But also they're right in the fact that people traditionally tend to prefer candidates. You're seen as more attractive when you're in role than when you're on the market. So I understand why that's built up historically, but yeah, certainly pride. And people don't want to go to their network with their cap in hand or lose face and feel like they've been dethroned to some extent, and their identity has been taken from them. And it's a very, very difficult thing to deal with, which is why psychologically managing it as a project and using your skills and owning it reinforces your sense of purpose, your sense of capability, allows you to continue celebrating wins and just feeling more like you're taking control of the situation rather than being a passenger on that journey. So LinkedIn wise, needs to be optimized, needs to be clear you're available and open to approach, needs to be set up in a way that makes sure that you show up in the relevant searches. And then applications wise, if you're applying via a job advert, you need to be wary that there could be AI or ATSs working on the other side. So you need to make sure that you've got the right buzzwords and you haven't got any overly jazzy formatting on your CV or anything. But also in general, in terms of CVs, I find too many CVs are not outcome focused enough, and are also too generic. People tend to have this kind of generic personal profile that everybody's reads the same. And I think the more you can get some of your uniqueness into it and talk about the unique blend of things you bring, your character, the pain you solve, the habits you have, all that sort of stuff, I think that also really stands out when people are reading them.
No, that sounds good. And I think the thing that I would just contribute into what you just said, which is, I think it's about also getting the balance. You made the point that I'm very interested in the human side of things, because I think that's a leveler for everybody. It's tough when you're looking for work, especially at the moment when there seems to be zero opportunities. I think getting that balance right, so thinking about the things that energize. So you heard you talk about the process, but having the process that allows you to focus on the job search. But what's the process to make you sort of your best self, if you want, you're ready for that. So keeping energy up. So, whether that's, mindful that we're all locked down at this moment in time, but, reading, being creative. So you're able to come out when you have those opportunities to be bang, I'm able to explode into that space and take full advantage of it, rather than just thinking, it's contracting, I've got no opportunities, because that can be a difficult space to sit in for too long.
Absolutely, yeah. You've got to fix your own oxygen mask first. That's for sure.
Yeah, I like that. You've obviously flown quite a bit then, Andrew.
Yeah, I have historically, not recently. So I think you have to do that. That's right. And I think one great thing that's come out of this lockdown period is everybody's appreciation for getting outside for an hour. I've had more walks with my young family in the last 3 weeks than the previous 12 months.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's something that's now scarce and been taken away from us. We're making sure we get out for our hour every day together, and I've really benefited mentally from that, and it's been really good time with the family as well. So yeah, definitely that kind of stuff nourishes you and gets you in the right mindset to take ownership of your situation and perform at all the key moments, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm with you. And actually, I know a bit of a plug for you, but you've got some great online video content that people could probably access to sort of get them in that game. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what the initial launch for Career Jump was we put 30 videos with 30 corresponding templates, I guess, examples and workbooks all up into an online platform. And you can access it 24/7, anytime, anywhere from an app, or you can work through it on your laptop or whatever you might do. And we currently deliver this via our outplacement services, but also our Career Jump Club, which is a low-cost option for people who just want to access that and become part of a job-seeking community, but don't necessarily want to invest in full coaching products. So yeah, that's been really powerful. I think my key learning on the digital side of it is the on-demand element of it is really powerful. So if you can imagine somebody about to go into an interview, or to a video interview in this day and age, an hour before they go into that video interview, revisiting some online modules, one of which reminds them of how to tell their story effectively, another which reminds them of the research they need to have done to make sure that they can ask great questions, another of which is a pre-interview pep talk that literally just tells them that, you know, that they've got this and to not be nervous and to be the best version of themselves they can be, and all of that. It's very powerful getting that on-demand, real-time input into people. So it's been a really interesting learning building out the tech side of it. So but thanks for the opportunity for me to plug it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. But I think it's really, really useful. I mean, you know, if you've been a senior leader and suddenly you find yourself on the market, you know, let's face it, it probably would have been a long, long time ago that they would have gone for an interview. And I think, like most things in life, it's all about practice. And sometimes you need a guide within that. And I think the content that I know you put out there in the marketplace is first class and really helps people get match fit. So when they go for the opportunity, it's not their practice round. They're really sharp, really clear about how they want to come across, how they want to speak, what are the points they want to make. So I think, how do people, I know probably after this we'll put up a post on it, but how do people find you? How do they find that? And I'm thinking both from an individual point of view, Andrew, but also from an employer, from a company who's thinking about, look, you know, I'm going to have to make some tough calls, but I want to do it as well as possible. How do they find what you're offering?
Yeah, so my website's www.execcareerjump.com, and there's a whole bunch of stuff around outplacement on there. LinkedIn's very big for me as well. I've got plenty of information on there if people want to find it that way. And I've also got my collaboration with Collabs, which is part of their overall talent recovery program. So for businesses that are going, right, we need to right size and then reset and then start to build a pipeline of future talent that's going to serve our business, and build an employer brand that's going to serve our business for the new world, and then make sure we kick on out of it. Some of the stuff that we're talking about is integrated into that program, and that's at wearecollabs.com. So yeah, plenty of ways to find me. There's a lot of action going on in this space, and we're expecting there to be some good demand over the next 12 months, and for us to continue to all I'm trying to do at the moment is serve people as much as you can, and also just continue to refine the techniques, and look at all the data of all the different Career Jump Club members and everyone who's going through outplacement with us to really nail down what seems to be working and what isn't, because there's definitely some trends.
No, it's a great advice, and I think no, it's some really good points. So I tell you what, let's just mix it up a little bit. So I don't know if you were able to listen to the last webinar, Andrew, but I've got a thing called a lightning round.
Yeah,
just to dig a little bit deeper into who is Andrew MacAskill. So what's been your sort of favorite leadership management book that you've read over the last 12 months?
Yeah, it's just such a difficult question to answer that, but the number one book for this time in particular, but also just a book that is completely the most powerful leadership book I've ever read, is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
Incredible, absolutely incredible book. It was published in 1946. He was somebody that was held in the concentration camps, and later became a pioneer of a number of techniques, things such as CBT and logotherapy and things that are used generally now to help people control their inner voice and to not judge what's going on in their head, but to take ownership of their actions and focus on the controllables. You can pretty much trace every good bit of advice in that space back to that book. I think it's an incredible book.
Wow. So let me just get that right. So it's Man's Search for Meaning. Is that right?
Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. I'll be adding that onto my list.
Yes, very, very pertinent for these times, that's for sure.
Yeah. And knowing you're a busy guy, so what do you do to relax? What do you do to sort of recharge your cells?
Yeah, so definitely reading and podcasts are a big thing for me. I've been quite really, really consistent actually over the last 10 years on that, on a daily basis. Kind of, I really enjoy escaping into a good podcast or a good book. Family time, obviously, I've got relatively young children, so that's something that drives purpose for me and is obviously right at the top of my priority list as well. Other than that, some pretty bad golf and occasional five-a-side football. I think sport, if you like sport, I think sport is fantastic from a camaraderie point of view, but also from an escapism point of view. Like when you're in the middle of a five-a-side game of football, you're not thinking about business or stress or work. You're so present in the game, you know. And I think anything that's both physical but also shuts your mind off to everything else for a period of time whilst you're focusing on it is great.
Yeah, I think that the ability to empty your head of what's been buzzing around it before, I think, is just a great way to sort of recharge and just get present again. So yeah,
and
great.
When you're coaching like we are, one thing you've got to be really careful of is in serving everybody as well as you possibly can. And I know how far you go to support everybody that you work with because I've seen it and experienced it. But like we have to be really careful as coaches and leaders of not taking on everybody else's stress. And because we already have our own stresses and anxieties, and you know, in propping everybody else up, it's very easy to actually take on everybody else's stress as well, isn't it?
Definitely, and that's why I suffer my runs with pride because I know it helps me with that. So one last question for you on this lightning round, which is, what's been the biggest, or who's been the biggest influence on your life?
Oh, definitely my parents. My dad's born in a council estate, Scottish guy, amazing work ethic, one of those kind of left education at 15, walked 3 miles to work and back every day.
Wow.
Did an apprenticeship, worked his whole way up, and became a top engineer in his field. So definitely him. And my mum too is really bright, ambitious, caring, high EQ, supports lots and lots of people. So definitely my folks. I think they are the biggest influence for sure.
Yeah, nice. So look, just had a question come in, Andrew, which is if you were to give some advice to a business thinking about, you know, they're going to let people go, what 1 or 2 bits of top advice would you give them?
Yeah, so they need to humanise the process.
Okay.
Which is the opposite to what Bird did. So that means understanding that the change is holistic. So we need to be offering help to people that are leaving, outplacement support to people that are leaving, that doesn't just cover the search for a job bit, but also covers their health and well-being, their fitness, their financial planning, and the mental health side of it, because it's a big thing. And also be really aware of this problem called stayer's remorse. And what I mean by that is that it's proven that people who stay during a restructuring process, so people that are effectively left in the organisation once the redundancies have happened, are 60% more likely to be on medication for their mental health in the following period. And it's this stayer's remorse problem. So you've got to be really, really careful and close with the people that are left, not just assuming that they'll be okay and they're relieved because they weren't cut, because they're also heavily affected too. And there's lots of stats around you know, how a small drop can result in a 40% productivity, a small amount of cuts, sorry, can result in a 40% productivity drop and a 30% voluntary turnover increase. So there's all of these rippling impacts that we spoke about earlier with those who stay. So yeah, don't underestimate the strain it places on everybody to see their friends and colleagues leave.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Okay, so one last shout out. If anybody else has got any questions, otherwise I think there's one or two we can pick up afterwards, Andrew, and just email back the people directly. But I would just say, look, thank you very much for freeing up your time. I know you're a busy guy. So I appreciate you contributing to what I've been trying to do, which is get some great advice out there to people. So I appreciate your support on doing that. I would encourage people to go out and search for the content that Andrew's put out there, because if you're a business thinking about letting people go, there's some great insights there. And if you're an individual looking for your next role, there's some really good video content in terms of how to get match fit and doing that. So Andrew, if you just want to remind people what website they should be looking for.
Yep, so www.execcareerjump.com. There's just one final question that's coming from Noreen. Can I just address?
Yeah, sure, I've just seen that. Go for it.
It's a good question from Noreen, because she's saying, how do you humanise the redundancy process if you are the person responsible for facing employees that the organisation you represent is taking a ruthless, cold approach? I think it's about making sure that you show emotional intelligence in how it's delivered. If you look at the 5 o'clock briefings that are being delivered at the moment on the coronavirus update, the person without, there's no good news in that, right? Let's be honest about it. There's no good news in it. But the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak's ratings have gone up whilst everybody else's have gone down. Matt Hancock, the business secretary, got panned the other day. Priti Patel got panned when she was on. And you look at that and you go, why is that? And the most common bit of feedback coming back to why they're buying into Rishi Sunak over the others is because of his emotional intelligence. It's emotional intelligence. He's not just coldly delivering the bad news. He's really showing an empathy and an understanding for the human impact of the decisions he's having to make. So whilst you can't control everything, you can't control your business culture, you can control how you show up and deliver that news.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that, Andrew, because that's the only thing we can normally control is our actions, how we connect and how we share and how we support people. And I think if we stay in that human space, then even if it's a really tough message, and often it will be, people will know that we've played our role in trying to make it as painless and supportive as we possibly can. And that's something we definitely can do.
Totally.
So I hope that helps answer that question.
Good.
Brilliant. Well, look, good wrap up. Thanks again for your time, Andrew. Thanks everybody else for joining in today's webinar. There will be another one next week. And if you're looking for more information about The Zone, then please go along to www.thezone.co, where you can find more information about what we do to support businesses become more human. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Lauren. Take care.
Cheers, Andrew. Bye.